Hello everyone and welcome to STEMfest 2015. My name is Bradley Layton and I'm a professor at the University of Montana where I direct the Energy Technology program. Before we get started, I want to thank you for spending time with me, Governor Bullock, and the fine folks at the Inspired Classroom and an organization known as We Are Montana in the Classroom, who place University of Montana faculty members, graduate students, and professionals in K-12 classrooms statewide to inspire them about higher education and career pathways. Today, with the technology provided by VisionNet, we are able to fulfill this mission. This event is part of a national initiative called STEM Career Accelerator Day, being hosted by STEM Connector. You can find more about their organization at stemconnector.org. My first connection with STEM Connector came through as a result of a National Science Foundation grant I received through their Advanced Technology Education Division to enhance the educational opportunities for my energy technology students, a few of whom you see behind me, to strengthen our relationship with the Blackfeet Community College, to build connections with renewable energy technology companies, and to build connections with high school students around Montana and across the United States. You probably already know this, but the presentation you're about to take part in is a minds-on activity. So get comfortable in your seat, take a deep breath, and get ready to meet and interact with some of Montana's leaders in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Now, I'll hand it over to Governor Bullock, who would like to share with you his vision for the future of STEM education in Big Sky Country.
Hi everyone, I'm Governor Steve Bullock, and I'd like to thank you for being a part of the first ever Montana STEMfest and showing an interest in a career in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and math. These are some of the fastest growing career fields in the nation. In fact, over the next decade, Montana is expected to need more than 2,000 new workers a year with skills specific to these fields. And these are good paying jobs in careers such as engineering, research and technology, architecture, and health sciences. I've been working hard to ensure that students like you have access and support to succeed, which is why we've created the Governor's STEM Scholarship Program to provide financial aid to students pursuing one of these careers. We've also launched the Montana STEM Mentors Initiative to encourage more girls to pursue a career in these fields. You all will determine what the future of Montana looks like, and your participation today means that we will have a bright one. Thanks so much for being here and have a great time.
So I would like to introduce, here they come. There they are. We have Shannon, Furniss, Devin Holmes, and Paul Gladen. And what I would like to do is I would like everybody to say their name. I would like you to say one great thing about where you live. And I would also like you to say how STEM impacts your life. Shannon, we're going to go ahead and start with you.
Hi everybody, I'm Shannon Furniss, and I love living in Missoula in a place called the Rattlesnake where I can look out my window and see deer and bear and the apple tree. I can get to my fantastic place of work at the University of Montana, and I can also, from my house, I can get to the local ski area and on the chairlift in 22.5 minutes.
Hi everyone, my name's Devin Holmes. I'm a recent transplant to Montana, moved up here from San Francisco. Live in Missoula. The thing I love about living in Missoula is just the sense of space, just not having people on top of each other like you do in the Bay Area. Engineer by education, undergrad, and my entire career has just been in STEM, and I just like building things.
And I'm Paul Gladen. I'm director of the Blackstone Launchpad at the University of Montana, which is a program that helps students, alumni, faculty, and staff that want to start their own business, but also one of the founding team of the Montana Code School, which we're going to speak about briefly. I love living in Missoula. As you can probably tell from the accent, I'm not originally from Montana. I've lived and worked in places like London and New York and Rome and Dublin, and Missoula for me is just one of the most kind of collaborative, supportive places for doing cool stuff. And STEM?
Yep.
So STEM for me, I've got a maths undergrad, and one of my favorite questions about mathematics is actually whether it's an art or a science. So it's actually very structured, but it's also very creative. So I've found having a maths undergrad has really helped me think through problems in a very structured way, but also bring very kind of creative solutions to problems. So let me tell you a little bit about the Montana Code School. kind of get the logo behind me there. So I'm Paul Gladen, Devin Holmes, you've met already. So what is the Montana Code School? The Montana Code School is a program that takes people with little or no coding skills to being entry job ready over about 12 weeks. It's based on a boot camp model that's now been in place in many cities across the country and now internationally, and has been shown to be a really effective way of helping people that would love to code, love to explore career opportunities in code, to develop those skills very quickly. So what you would learn at the Montana Code School is what we call the full stack. So that's really the whole suite of technologies that you need to understand, from kind of the web front end to the servers and databases and connectivity that sits kind of behind that code and hosts that code. So we've got a specific set of languages that we're teaching, predominantly a JavaScript stack. You'll undoubtedly be aware of, or will learn pretty quickly, there's a whole host of different programming languages out there, and we can't attempt to teach you all of those languages in a 12-week program. Really what we're trying to teach you is the ability to continue to learn to code. So as new languages come along, or you find yourself in different organizations and situations where coding is important, that you have the ability to adapt, to learn new code languages, and to develop applications that can benefit the organizations or the people you're trying to serve. So what would you be able to do at the end of a boot camp is, one, you'll be able to develop applications of your own. They could be some basic web apps, they could be some kind of games, all sorts of different things, but you should be effective to potentially go into an organization or to start doing something yourself, even being kind of freelance, so using your own skills and consulting with others. So why have we started a Montana Code School, and why would you want to think about attending a Montana Code School? What a number of us in the business community here in Missoula and elsewhere across Montana have realized is there's actually a very kind of fast-growing tech sector in Montana, and a very entrepreneurial sector, which is creating a lot more job opportunities, and those businesses that have those job opportunities are finding there's not enough programming talent available in the state to fill those jobs. And what's most important about those jobs is those are high-paying jobs. A survey by the Montana High Tech Alliance discovered that on average, jobs in the high-tech industry in Montana are paying twice the average wage rate, the average salary in Montana. So these are high-paying jobs. So we've created the Code School really for people like you and others already in the workplace that are seeing the opportunity of those coding jobs, but don't necessarily have the skills, and giving them the ability to develop those skills in a very compressed time scale, and therefore have the opportunity to take advantage of these high-paying, exciting, challenging jobs that really can contribute to the development of Montana and the business community here. So that's why we started this program. And that slide really kind of says the same thing. So in terms of the first class, Devin.
Yeah. So we started this initiative, putting this together back in May, and we recruited over the summer and launched our first class in September of this year with 12 students, 7 men and 5 women. One of the big things we really wanted to do was make sure we sought out diversity in our classroom. As some of you probably know, diversity in the tech sector tend to be a lot of male, but not a lot of female. And so we really tried to recruit and find women who were interested in joining the class. We had scholarships for women funded by the Women's Foundation of Montana, and ended up with almost 50% of the class being women. 3 instructors in the class, 1 full-time, 2 part-time, so we have a pretty good instructor to student ratio. And we're teaching actually in the University Center. We rented a space on campus at the University of Montana. It is actually the former tech lab, and so we ended up taking it over because it was already wired for the computers and what we needed. And I think one thing for everyone to note is the Montana Code School isn't just for someone who's graduated from college or someone who's a career changer. we actually would encourage students who are 16 years old and older to apply if this is something you're interested in doing. And so next year, our plans are to do 4 classes. We're going to try and do that every year, about 4 classes a year, every 3 months or so. And we're really looking at actually having a summer class that aligns with the end of high school and the beginning of the next year. So if this is something you're interested in, there's an opportunity for you as high school students to attend, obviously if you're 16 and older, and it won't conflict with your academic year. The other thing we're looking at next year is, granted we're here in Missoula, but we are looking at geographic expansion. We'd love to bring the Montana Code School and have a campus in Bozeman and Billings and other cities around the state. So keep your eye on that. The last thing to say really is that this has been a community effort. And one of the things Paul and I and the team really talked about was to make sure that the entire community was involved in this. And so it is a nonprofit. We're fiscally sponsored at the Montana Technology Enterprise Center that's known as Montech. Mentors, we have a lot of mentors being provided by the community here in Missoula. Companies like Orbital Shift and Audience Awards and Workiva, Submittable, Snap Apps, a bunch of other companies. And then Wisetail Works, which is a company out of Bozeman, has generously granted their online learning platform. So that's something we're developing for folks that maybe don't have geographic access to where we're teaching, but want to start to engage with the Code School in a virtual environment and start to learn online. And then I mentioned, obviously, the grants provided by the Women's Foundation. The Missoula Economic Partnership and Submittable also gave us some scholarship dollars as well. So opportunities for folks to get scholarships to come to the Code School. The last slide here is how do you find out more information? Well, we got a website. That's a good thing for a code school. MontanaCodeSchool.com. Go there. You can learn about the curriculum, about when the next classes are being held, and sign up for our email newsletter to keep up to date what's going on. And then if you want to email us directly, Paul, myself, and then Kelsey O'Donnell, who is our AmeriCorps Vista, feel free to shoot us an email and we'd be happy to share more information.
I'll just add a couple of quick things as well. One is that for those of you that may be considering studying at the University of Montana at some point in the next few years, the Montana Code School is actually able to give you 9 credits for doing the boot camp, which can then be used towards kind of your education at the University of Montana. The other thing we're also looking to do, and Devin, you may be able to tell me the dates on this, but we're also looking at doing some weekend boot camps, which would be a sort of quick and easy way to get a little bit of introduction to code and to the Montana Code School. I think we're planning one coming up later in November.
Yeah, I think the next weekend boot camp's the weekend of November 14. So if you're interested, again, go to the website and sign up, and we'd love to have you there for the weekend.
I'm probably planning more in 2016 too.
Yeah.
So.
Hi, everybody. I would like to talk to you today about the communications revolution. And really, technology has transformed the entire industry, and it's created all kinds of new opportunities. I'd like to tell you about my own personal journey through the communications revolution. It started here this is a place in Garmisch, Germany. This is the Zugspitze Mountain. Right there, where I lived. It's in the German Alps at 10,000 feet. And if you see the paper right there, I delivered that Stars and Stripes newspaper when I was in junior high, and I rode my bike through rain, through snow with a broken arm, and delivered it. And my journey eventually took me to the University of Montana, where I am communications director and editor of the Montana Business Quarterly. But along the way, before I got to the University of Montana, our family went to Russia, Moscow. And this little guy you see right here in the corner, is a KGB officer. He's a secret police. When we lived there, it was during the Cold War times. And our family was at the embassy there in Moscow. And these Russian secret police officers followed us everywhere we went because they wanted to know what we were up to. Anyway, I first got inspired to become a journalist when I was working in a place called the Press and Culture section of the U.S. Embassy. And there, I worked with journalists who were foreign correspondents from the LA Times, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and that really inspired me. And I said, I think I want to be a journalist. So I headed to the University of Montana, and when I got there, I pictured myself as, I was, if you remember the comics with Lois Lane, and she and Clark Kent were in the newsroom, and they worked together, and she was always trying to uncover whether or not he was Superman. So I pictured myself as an investigative reporter. Well, instead of going into the war zone as a foreign correspondent or becoming an investigative reporter, I went to the University of Montana right after I graduated and worked at a place called the Bureau of Business and Economic Research. And what we do at the Bureau of Business and Economic Research is we study the economy, we research business trends, economic impacts, and we do all kinds of studies to economic analysis, economic forecasts, and when we collect all of our data and our findings, we communicate our findings. We do it in a number of different ways through publications like these that you see, and we do it also because of technology, we don't just do print. We do press releases, we do social media posts, we do e-newsletters. We have to take all of our research and data and get it out in a multifaceted, multi-channeled way. I'd like to feature a couple of these Montana Business Quarterlies. In fact, Paul, that you just heard from, mentioned the study for the Montana High Tech Alliance. And we were the Bureau of Business and Economic Research did that study, and we found all kinds of interesting things. For instance, high tech is growing at 8 to 10 times the statewide growth. And as Paul mentioned, paying median incomes that are $50,000, twice the median income. And not only do we just report the data, we go and we talk to some of the high-tech businesses. For instance, we talked to ATG in Missoula and Edgelog in Missoula and also Workiva. These tech companies are doing international global business right here from Montana cities, and they're working with Fortune 500 companies, and they've hired many of our Montana University System graduates. So that's a really cool thing. Another study I'd like to feature is one that's been very popular, and this is about the economic impact of craft brewing in Montana. As it turns out, this is a very popular topic. Montanans do like their beers because our study found that we are ranked number 2 in the nation per capita in the number of craft breweries. Just second only to Vermont. Okay. So technology's changed a little bit in the past few years. This is actually way before my time, and you may have seen pictures of this, but this is what a mainframe computer used to look like. It was gigantic. It was under refrigeration and in a gigantic room that was probably the size of your living room. So I like this quote here, and this is from the IBM chairman in 1943, and he said, "I think there's a world market for maybe 5 computers." Well, I think he was a little bit off, but you can understand how he would think that if a mainframe computer would fill an entire room. That obviously you wouldn't think of having a lot of home computers. Okay, so we at the Bureau, we do all kinds of survey research, like I said, and it's very important because we call a random sample, or we either call them on cell phone, landline, or through web. This survey that we did is on statewide media habits, and it's particularly relevant because it's on communications and how technology's changed communications. It used to be that everybody would just get their news through a newspaper or through the radio or something, but the internet changed everything. We don't know how they get their news. We don't know what's important to them. So I would like to ask you all a few questions from our survey, and I would like Allie to come in and help me with this.
Okay, so this is what we're going to do. Teachers, I need your help with this. So everybody grab your nearest teacher, and if you don't have a nearest teacher to grab and hug, you get to choose a representative from your class. Yay! Columbia Falls. Okay, so what's going to happen is Shannon is going to ask the question, and then you can see behind me that there are a list of answers. First, she's going to read the answers off. Okay, so just so you get them into your mind. And then we're going to do it one more time, and I want you to think about your answer, and I want you to raise your hand for the answer that applies to you. Now, this is where the teacher or responsible student is going to jump in, and I want you to keep track, and I want you to figure out which is the most popular response, the second most popular response, and the third most popular response. Okay? And it may be that there's only one or two popular responses in your class, and that is all right as well. And so then after she has asked the question, we are going to ask the responsible person to go ahead and report back on the findings. So, without further ado.
Okay. So, which one of the following issues is currently the most important issue facing the state? A, jobs in the economy. B, education. C, healthcare. D, moral values. E, energy and resource development. F, the environment. G, illegal immigration. H, crime. I, spending and state taxes. Or J, race relations. Next question. Okay, thinking about the news, how did you get your news in the past week? A, on television. B, on the internet. C, in print. D, on the radio. Or E, in conversations with family, friends, or colleagues. Do you have a trusted news source? Yes or no? Thanks, everybody. So at the end, if we have time, I would like to go ahead and if you would like to ask me about how it turned out and what our sample of 520 some people thought on these questions, I'll go ahead and you can ask me afterwards. But these kind of surveys are really important, and we collect all this data, but what's really important is that we need to communicate the data, because if we don't communicate it, nobody knows. And so that's part of my job, is getting it out in publications, on websites, and press releases, and things like that. So thanks. Okay, so I'd like to talk just a little bit more about communications and technology. There's been a real shift from having someone tell you the news, and you guys, I'm sure, probably have seen clips from this, but this was in 1969 when Apollo 11 went to the moon, and Neil Armstrong was the first man ever to walk on the moon. And this was a much anticipated event. This was really, really a huge deal. And everybody sat around the TV waiting and waiting for somebody to tell the news, report the news. Well, how would that look today? I think it probably would look a little bit different, because instead of just someone telling you the news, you're creating your own news. So there you are, you're telling the story through Facebook, through Twitter, on websites, you're chatting with your friends. It's a whole different story. So communications used to be a real one-way street where we used to wait till everybody told us the news. But now everybody can get involved and collaborate and create their own news story. And there was really a time when you needed someone's permission to be published. But thanks to social media, that doesn't happen anymore. And there are, of course, all sorts of issues with that too that we could talk about later. Is that when you're looking for what's a reliable, credible news source, you need to make sure that they're trained journalists, and then there are just people who put their opinion out there. So while there's some really good things, there are also some things you need to watch out for. Okay, so really, communications, content, and technology are inextricably linked. Take some data. So we look at our phones 150 times a day. We do 3 billion Google searches a day, 400 million tweets, and 100 hours of video are uploaded every minute on YouTube. It's pretty amazing. So, because of these changes in communications and technologies, there are all kinds of opportunities for all sorts of different people. Not only you could be a journalist or a writer, but there's also people need video streaming, blogging, and really, I like this quote: the way the news is presented and consumed today is very different from 10 years ago, and it really requires a whole new skill set. So, what does this mean for you? So there are all kinds of career paths. There's video, there's content marketing, there's website development, app development, big data, data visualization, real-time mapping. Technology has made communications a completely different different deal. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about one of these, and that's data visualization. So at the Bureau of Business and Economic Research, we collect numbers, tons and tons of numbers, and we make charts and we have tables and everything, but sometimes all these numbers, what do they really mean? So here's another quote I like. The greatest value of a picture is when it forces us to notice what we didn't expect to see. So here's a really early example of one of the first infographics, and this is the story of, this is done by a person named Charles Menard in 1812. He was talking about the 1812 war when Napoleon was taking his army into Russia. And if you look right here at this, the tan on here, this at the very beginning point there, at the end, there were almost 600,000 soldiers, and they were marching into Russia. And this is a very interesting infographic because it plots 6 different kinds of data and shows it: latitude, longitude, temperature, number of soldiers. There are a couple other data points. So as they march into Moscow, sorry, I'm on the wrong side here. There we go. Okay, you can see their troops are going down and down in numbers. And then when they hit Moscow, and that black line you see there, they're turning around and they're starving, they're fighting in battles, their food supply is dwindling, and their numbers are reducing and reducing and reducing. At the very end there, if I could figure out, okay, there we go. At the very end, this black line here, there are fewer than 30,000 soldiers. And so this is a really cool infographic and way to show data and information. Here's another one that's really interesting. In the 1850s, people were dying from cholera all over the place. And there were data and numbers, and they were all on sheets, and nobody could really figure out what was happening. And they went and knocked on doors and took polls and took surveys until one doctor, Dr. John Snow, said, I'm going to put this data all in one place in a map. And all those little dots you see right there are the cholera deaths. And all of the X's, the red X's there, are the water pumps. So what they figured out when they put it together in this format is that if you drank water from Broad Street, where the X is right in the middle, right there, you were definitely going to get cholera. So that was an interesting way to portray that data. Okay, so like I said, technology has opened all sorts of new opportunities for people. Interactive data production, and I don't know if you all have seen this. Snowfall avalanche at Tunnel Creek. This is an interactive media piece done by the New York Times. And I don't know if you've heard about 3 years ago, there were 3 people killed in an avalanche, and it was in the Cascade Mountains. So instead of just telling this story about how these people were killed in the avalanche and how some of them survived, it's a huge interactive media piece. It's a video. This person, Elsie, right there, pictured there, went through the avalanche, and she was churned around and around like she was in a washing machine, and she thought that any minute she was going to die, but she didn't. She survived. Then this interactive piece shows the entire mountain range and what was going on at the time, that there was 32 inches of snow. And then later in the story, a meteorologist tells everybody that it's the perfect time for a perfect storm. And you should check it out. I can get you the website, but it's really an interesting way of telling a story, very engaging. There are like 6 parts of it. I don't know if you've seen this one, scaling Everest. So no longer do you just write a story about climbing to the top of Everest. You can actually virtually go through every point, starting from sea level up to your first base camp, and then up through all the camps till you've reached 29,000 feet, and everybody's wearing oxygen masks. And it tells about the animals and the birds at different levels and the different altitudes and what's happening at those altitudes. So a whole different way of communicating, and technology is what's made this possible. And then I'd like to show you an example of real-time mapping, and Allie's going to help me here. This is a cool story that someone did, and Allie will put it up here on the screen. Okay, so there are all kinds of educational opportunities, all kinds of ways for you to get into communications and technology. And really, you don't want to wait for it to come to you. You could get internships, get involved, work on your school paper, join clubs, be in tech clubs, get involved, and really create your own story, because now everybody can be part of the news through blogging, through social media. Showcase your creativity, really embrace technology and create a presence, and really find your place in the communications revolution. I mean, there's a place for journalists, for communicators, for coders, for statisticians, data analysts, scientists, mathematicians. Really create your content, interpret data, use technology, communicate, and tell your story. Thank you.
All right, you guys. So fantastic. I'm going to invite Paul and Devin back on, and we're gonna go through these. Oops.
Yeah, we can do that.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Just for little questions. And the way we'll do this is I'm going to hit each school. You'll have an opportunity to ask a couple of questions, and then we'll just open it up. And if you have a question after that, if you just raise your hand, I'll know which school because I can see all of you. Let's go ahead and start with Columbia Falls.
Okay. Hi.
Hold on just a second. I'm sorry. Turn the volume down. Here we go. Okay, go for it.
Okay, so for the coding school, do those credits transfer to other state colleges and stuff, or is it just with the University of Montana?
That is a great question, and I don't specifically know the answer to yet, but we'll be happy to look into that. And we'll have to get back to you on that one. They only just granted the credits very recently, so we haven't really looked into the logistics on it, but it's a great question. We'll try and find out.
Okay, so back in like the the 80s or 90s, I believe it was, when you went to school, not only would they teach you typing, but they teach you languages like BASIC or Fortran, whatever it was back then. I can't remember the exact names. Assembly language and stuff like that. I don't remember my question. Yeah, do you guys like teach those types of languages like assembly and kind of the older stuff that's more down to the hardware than C or something?
You know, we don't. Generally, the curriculum right now is just based around, like Paul said, the open source stack. I studied Fortran when I went to university, so I totally know what you're talking about. And part of it is to just address the need for junior web developers. If you know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you can really get a job and move into the tech sector fairly rapidly. The way to think about the Code School is that this is a complementary opportunity to pursuing 2-year and 4-year degrees in the technology field in computer science, where you would be learning a lot more in an academic institution about the theory and about the older languages that aren't used as commonly now as web development languages. This is really more focused in on the web development stuff. If I could ask one, just
Absolutely.
if I could get a just show of hands, generally speaking, would a high school aged Code School class be interested to any of you guys who might want to go to Code School where it was just 16 to 18-year-olds and not mixed in with older students? If you're interested, raise your hand.
Thanks for participating in STEMfest. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.